Today's deck testing video is going to be another one of the what I would consider obvious decks that you would try to build once we got access to the new tricolor options. This is the Daggerfall. You could call it aggro, you could call it mid, some people might call it mid-grow, even though I'm not a huge fan of that term. But basically, this is a deck whose curve essentially ends at 5, with the exception of unique legendaries, and then the one mandatory Covenant card, which I've opted to use as the Sword. I think that the Sword is better in a list like this than Emmerich is, because Emmerich is about fighting for control of the board, and by the time you get to Magic at 8, Magic at 9, you want to be finishing off your opponent. This provides reach on an existing creature, and if you have no existing creature, it has the potential to at least give you, even though you don't want to play it this way, at least give you a creature with a lot of stats that has some resiliency in the form of ward, so that it's not a dead card in your hand that late. So I think Masterpiece is just slightly better than Emmerich in a list like this. But again, all your other 6s are unique legends, and then it's basically an aggressive deck whose curve tops out at 5. This is what I call Withered Hand Sorcerer, if you're paying attention to the deck titles, because it's essentially mid-sorcerer that also wants to run Withered Hand Cultist and some of the other strong strength cards. So, again, I'm not going to go through every card choice right now, because 1, I don't think this list is refined yet, and 2, when I do refine the list, I will likely end up doing some sort of deck testing, deck spotlight video, not deck testing. Right now we're doing deck testing, which is you play 2 games, win or lose, just to kind of showcase what the point of the deck is, though in a deck like this, the point is just play good stuff on curve. I wish that there was more to it than that. There's not in this case. We're just playing good stuff on curve. Now, it does look like we're running into a very highly rated Crusader. So I can only assume this is going to be some sort of aggressive Crusader that's trying to prey on people still testing and refining lists. And that's fine.
Watch yourself now.
God's bless you, sir. I'm sure this will go horribly for us.
What did you expect? A friendly greeting?
But nonetheless, we're gonna play it through here.
Face me, you
So let's go and do this, and then we'll try to contest with Windkeep over Harpy. Harpy, in theory, means we're probably not taking 4 damage, but I wanted to play this so that we could, assuredly
I will have your head.
get smacked in the face and have our word stolen. I think we just take the trade. Further our advantage here in the field. Hope that they don't have a good answer.
Let nothing through.
But thus far, I haven't seen anything that says to me this is any different than what I expected it to be. Now, the real moment of truth is going to be now, because 2 of the cards that have been played against me have Prophecy. So, does this mean we are running into a Prophecy aggro Crusader? Does appear that that might be the case. We're gonna try to slow things down a bit over here, just so we can clear up some of this and try to maintain our lead. We have 1 ring charge left, so we would like to get Lyris on the board. Alright, well, they are doing a pretty solid job over there of smacking us hard. Let's go ahead and take this trade now before we break the rune, and then we'll go from there. And I think, because we also have High King, this is kind of a tough call. As cool as Lyris would be, and I don't think Crusader in an aggressive fashion has a lot of answers for this, I think High King pulling this off the board makes more sense, because we can use Abner to copy High King the next turn. And right now we've got a pretty strong tempo lead. But playing against a deck that has Northwind Outpost, if they had like double raiding party and some natural Nords or something, we could be in some serious danger. So I think, as much as Lyris is cool, yeah, so here comes, for example, here comes that. So right now, we're gonna go ahead
Your
and
blood will spill.
swing. We sadly do not, it would appear, have lethal at the moment. Abner can not remove this, because this does not have ward itself, so it's still only going to be worth 4 damage. So our choices are, we can trade into this Abner and get them down to 1, or we could still just trade into this and play Lyris. If they don't answer Lyris, we just win. So I think that's going to be our best bet. The other option could be like mud crabs to try to find an answer, but
This world will be
in this case, I think just playing Lyris here makes the most sense, and then we just hope that they don't have 7 points of burst damage, which is entirely possible and reasonable with Crusader. Let's be clear here. Charge creatures, and here's the raiding party. So that's already worth 4. And if they've got another raid, I just said if they've got raiding parties, then they have the victory. All right, they got it. So we were 1 damage off of lethal there. We did have our Abner, which again, Abner would have hit for 4, but we needed 5 to either go face or even just to clear out. We could have used mud crabs and maybe tried to find an answer. Unfortunately, I did not do that, so we'll never know whether or not that was the correct play. Oh. It's a little bittersweet when I lose to raiding party, because I hate losing. I hate losing more than I like winning. But I also love charge creatures, Nord Firebrands. It's time to fight. So I don't know how I feel right now. I mean, I'm not happy, but I'm not upset. Let's hope that this next game goes a little bit better for us. The good news is, obviously, that was a very good opponent, right? They were number 13, playing a refined, aggressive Crusader list, and we went toe-to-toe with them, finding ourselves exactly 1 damage short of lethal. So I feel good. I feel confident with that performance. I think that means that there is some merit to our deck list, at least. It's also worth noting that, you know, they caught a prophecy. We did not. So you could argue that things were a little bit tipped away from us there as well. I don't want it to sound like I'm making excuses. I'm just trying to say that's usually a good sign, right? Like when you're deck building and you're trying to think about, like, is the deck that I have created on the right track? Because sometimes you'll build a deck and you can literally, like, lose the first 2 or 3 games with it, and you'll think, well, I lost the first 2 or 3 games. Clearly this is, like, garbage. But if they're all losses like that, where you're going, you know, toe-to-toe against very good opponents on very good lists and you're coming up just a little bit short, a lot of times that means that the deck itself might not be garbage per se. It might just need a little bit of help, or maybe just catching a break. It might be a bad string of variants. It's a small sample size, so that's a really heads-up play by the opponent to take away that ward before I can buff this and trade in with my ward. Very heads-up play. So we're gonna fight for control of the board here as best we can. Just drop the mammoth.
The Oriole do not waste time.
All right, so that is why they popped the ward. They were sitting on the Shining Saint, so they get the trade there.
Have business with House Halalu.
And another pawnbroker. Rather interesting.
My business is none of theirs.
Alright, so we're going to start with the clan captain over here so that we can do this. And then we've got a decision to make, but the one that I think I like the most, even though it does use our last ring charge, is to go with the Gatekeeper here. And then we're going to trade with the Profiteer. Just because even though we're breaking the rune there, which is a bit dangerous when you don't have Magicka to respond, it does leave a 2-2 to trade here. This also means that if they trade here, we're relatively okay. Wow, that was a pretty good rip from that pawnbroker. But the point or the premise to that board state that we had created was we wanted to do our best to try to come out ahead here. So now let's go ahead and see what we got on this end of things.
Come at me.
Now we're at that point where we have to decide, do we want to race or continue fighting for the board? Because we could throw this troll over here, but they could just trade into it even. Or we could throw it over here and try to race them. And now we do have some reach and not much else. So that says to me, I think we're gonna go in favor of what we had. If we had strong creatures we could follow up with, then I would be okay with sacrificing a troll for trades. We do not, however. We have cards that are meant for dealing extra damage. And so I think we want to try to punch them in the face if possible. Now, again, there are risks involved. Anytime you leave a clan captain or a 5th Legion trainer on the board against a deck like Halalu, they're going to have a lot of ways to abuse it. And that is dangerous, so... You can see them kind of hovering over there. I think they were doing some math. Saying, okay, you know, if I take 8, what does that put me at? 14. Without them playing anything else, that means they're on a 3-turn clock. They have 5 cards in hand, but they've played both of the zeros that likely came from the pawnbrokers. So they are legitimately 5 cards, one of them being stolen from us, which is also potentially scary. This was an interesting include to see.
One person's trash is another's treasure.
Tajik is having a good night.
Alright, so that explains why they were doing the math, it would seem. And we sadly don't have any good summons on our side to take advantage of with this. However, we do have some good summons on their side in the form of this Thieves Guild Shadowfoot. We do not, however, have a good way to slow down our opponent. At the moment, anyway. So our choice are we can either dig with the Tome and then play the Altmer to contest, or we can just straight up play a 5/5 in Abner and steal their top card. Now the reason I'm kind of leaning towards that is that means that we skip at least 1 rune in terms of potential prophecies. But again, the downside here is they only need 6 extra damage to kill us. So we are trying to win this race here. And so I think we're gonna take one from them. Crossbow is not a card that I was expecting to see played by my opponent.
Come at me.
A find like this belongs in a museum.
So we're gonna go this route. And if they use the trinket, they're down to 13, so we have enough to threaten lethal here, though I expect our clan captain will die. But with the items that we have in hand, specifically mace and crossbow, we do also have enough to continue threatening lethal afterwards. So the big concern here, just like last game, is whether or not our opponent can produce a bunch of bonus damage on 7 Magicka. They need 6 bonus damage, and we need to not have prophecies. So this might sound familiar, but if they have 2 raiding parties and we don't hit prophecies, we will lose the game. Alright, so they had another crossbow in their hand, and they had a douchnik. It tells me this is a very non-traditional Halalu deck, but more importantly, that tells me that this was almost certainly the card that was stolen
The hunter becomes
from
the
me.
hunted. Khajiit is having a
Ready to
good night.
die.
And we did not hit any prophecies, but we did find a silence in the form of our negation here. So we're going to go ahead and hope for no prophecy. And we're going to give Abner here the swing for the win.
You to disrespect
And take down at least one game here in the deck testing video. So as you can see, it plays the way you would expect it to. This is basically just like a curve aggressive deck. You play good stuff on curve, fight for the board when you need to, push damage when you think you can win the race. You know, our one loss was toe-to-toe with a very good deck against a very good player. So I think the bones of this list are here. Again, I'm not settled on a lot of the includes. I've already went through a couple of different versions of this, but anyway, you should expect to see this, or at least some version of this, on the ladder. Hopefully this helps you prepare for it or gives you ideas for how to build it. Like I always do, I'll put a deck code in the video description. If you made it this far and you're still listening to me rambling for some reason, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope to see you in the next video. Until next time, may you walk on warm sands.